Hey, welcome to the 1984 show. I just wanted to take a few minutes to focus on a topic that's been heavy on my mind lately, and that is, what is the function of government? Now, I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence when I address this topic. It's just that with the constant bombardment of media that we receive today from literally millions of sources, it's actually possible, if we're not careful, to be swayed from basic principles that we've been taught since we were children. U.S. citizens are preparing to cast their votes in November, in an election that may very well be the most important that our nation has ever faced. I wish that I were speaking in hyperbole, that I were just making a mountain out of a molehill. But the fact of the matter is that people on both sides of the political spectrum tend to agree upon one thing right now, and that is this: the United States is a nation in crisis. The wedge of division that has been driven into the fabric of our society at this point is so wide that we may well be past the point of no return. I hope that's not the case. But it's obvious that there needs to be a major shift of ideological paradigms to see any healing in our nation's future. So maybe the best starting point for considering what the function of government is to take a look at what government should not be. In George Orwell's 1984, we see a prophetic dystopian picture of what happens when government is allowed to exert heavy-handed, invasive control over its subjects and the citizen surveillance that accompanies that need for ultimate control. With the advent of GPS-enabled cell phones combined with COVID contact tracing apps, it's not too difficult to imagine a society where Big Brother is watching. The opposite of this picture of dismal survival under a cruel authoritarian power was presented to us in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, a book that was penned roughly a decade before Orwell wrote 1984. Huxley envisioned a society where the main goal of government was to keep the populace placated, with drugs, immorality, and leisure activities such as sports, but with the same end goal: ultimate control. And therein lies the real summation of what a government should not be. It should not seek to exert undue control over its citizens, neither through fear nor hedonistic pleasure. With everything that's been taking place in 2020, mask enforcement, school, business, and church closures, rioting, burning, looting, and violence in multiple major cities, and the list goes on, we keep hearing from public figures about the need to protect our democracy, our precious democracy. But the Founding Fathers actually saw democracy as a threat to their newly formed republic, a constitutional republic. And why? Why did outstanding men such as John Adams, James Madison, and John Jay speak out openly about the dangers of democracy? Well, the answer can be found in the simple quote that democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49%. In fact, the only difference between democracy and fascism is that of the tyrannical rule of a nation by many people versus one person. If you'd like to define fascism as authoritarian dictatorship, you could just as easily define democracy as mob rule, or the rule of the masses. That's why John Adams said, "Democracy will soon degenerate into an anarchy, such an anarchy that every man will do what is right in his own eyes, and no man's life or property or reputation or liberty will be secure, and every one of these will soon mold itself into a system of subordination of all the moral virtues and intellectual abilities, all the powers of wealth, beauty, wit, and science, to the wanton pleasures, the capricious will, and the execrable cruelty of one or a very few." First Chief Justice of the Supreme Court John Jay said, "Too many love pure democracy dearly. They seem not to consider that pure democracy, like pure rum, easily produces intoxication, and with it 1,000 mad pranks and fooleries." In the 1787 Federalist Paper, number 10, James Madison wrote that democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. And perhaps my favorite quote concerning democracy is that came from John Oliver, who said that democracy is like a tambourine. Not everyone can be trusted with it. You see, the Founding Fathers of the United States realized that man has a less than noble nature that causes him to look to his own self-interests over that of his fellow man. That's why they set up a government with 3 distinct branches with clearly defined duties that were to work together while keeping each other in check. And the one duty that was to be common to each branch was to defend and protect the very document that held forth the rights of their constituents. So, if you take a look at the oaths that are sworn or affirmed by the President of the United States, it reads like this: I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. All federal employees, which includes all members of Congress and the judiciary, must take the following oath. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Now, I realize that all of this is very elementary. It should all go without saying, but the reason that I'm reiterating this right now is that I fear that the mindset of the average U.S. citizen right now holds the belief that we are to fight for democracy, that our elected officials are in office to look after our best interests. For years now, we've recognized the corruption that has taken place in our highest levels of government due to special interest groups. But let me tell you something. The largest and perhaps most damaging special interest group that exists in the U.S. right now is the American people as a whole. Elected officials are employees. Employees who work for who? For the American people. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But don't lose sight of this one fact. An elected official really only has one bullet point in his job description, and it's not to make us happy or content. His job is not even to look after our best interests. The one primary task that is central to every federal employee's job description is this: to preserve, protect, support, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies. Why? Because if followed, the Constitution actually looks after my best interest. It doesn't actually guarantee me happiness, though the Declaration of Independence validates my pursuit of it, but it does acknowledge that the government should provide its citizenry with the following: a more perfect union, establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, promoting general welfare, and securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, our kids, grandkids, and our future generations. Then it even goes into detail for us on what a lot of that looks like. If I've got a beef, I've got the right to be vocal about it, even to petition the government. I have the right to peacefully assemble with others. I can worship God as I see fit. I can keep and bear arms. The government needs a search warrant based on probable cause if they want to enter my home. If I'm accused of a crime, I get to have a speedy public trial. No one can enslave me. I get the right to vote regardless of my race, color, or gender, and on and on. And here's the deal. If we feel that we need to revise the law, then provision has been made for that as well. Is it easy? No. But the process was intentionally designed to be difficult so as to avoid being subject to the whims of society. So why speak about these facts that should be so obvious to all of us who learned about this back in middle school? Here's why. We're getting ready to do some hiring again. This campaign season, and every campaign season that we've ever had, is nothing more than this: a chance to interview and vet potential employees. And the criteria is really very simple. Which potential job candidate is most likely to uphold the Constitution? That's it. That's all I need to know. I don't have to like him or his personality. I don't care what inappropriate remarks he may have made a decade or two ago. It doesn't matter. I just need to know, based on their past words and deeds, do I think that they are willing to defend the Constitution? For example, under the First Amendment, I have the right to the free exercise of religion. There's a long list of governors, mayors, and sheriffs who have demonstrated recently that they're more than willing to infringe upon that right by threatening to fine or arrest pastors and church members. Such a candidate needs to lose your vote. There are places like St. Louis that have proven that they are more than willing to infringe upon the Second Amendment rights of their citizens to bear arms and their Fourth Amendment rights through unlawful search and seizure. These officials need to lose your vote. Any candidate that would deny an American citizen their right to bear arms should lose your vote. Again, just to reiterate and drive the point home, you and I do not need any politician to protect us or our interests. We do not need them to protect us from tyranny. The Constitution of the United States of America does that. We just need to vote in employees who will faithfully do the job of protecting the Constitution. Then the Constitution will ensure that our rights are maintained. This November, do not allow yourselves to be swayed by personalities or political ploys. The politicians that we put in place really only need do one thing. Granted, their part in doing that one thing may differ slightly from one position to another. But never forget that the key to American liberty has always been that our republic has been ruled by the Constitution and not democracy. And one more thing, and this is really the most crucial point. Adherence to the Constitution as a practical means of governing through the rule of law has been extremely important to the past success of the United States. But the underlying reason that this nation has been as abundantly blessed and prosperous as it has is that we once honored God as a nation. Not that long ago, our children learned to read using the Bible. Biblical values were taught not only at home, but also at school. There was a genuine reverence for God that acted as a restraining factor in our society. Were we perfect? No. No, far from it. But there was an acknowledgement that God and His Word meant something to us, not only individually, but as a nation. Sadly, a large contingent of our populace has lost that reverence for God and His values. I believe that it is the single largest contributing factor toward what we are now witnessing, especially in our big cities today. We've become godless, immoral, proud, and defiant. How can a loving God bless such a people? The Bible tells us that one day Jesus will return to establish His kingdom here on the earth. When He does, there will be no more uprisings, riots, senseless violence. He'll demonstrate what the world has not seen for thousands of years: perfect governance. Until that time, those who would desire to be counted as His disciples are called to seek after what Jesus prayed for while He walked this earth: that His Father's kingdom would come and His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is not someone else's problem. Every one of us has failed at some point or another of our lives. None of us is holy or righteous in and of ourselves. We've all messed up. And all of us, at some level or another, has contributed adversely to the current condition of our nation. Now, you can believe that or not. I certainly know that to be true of myself. One of the most prevalent principles in the Bible is that of God granting grace to His people based upon their humility, and conversely, resisting them based upon their pride. As we enter into this important fall season, a season when mankind has always looked for a harvest, I would ask you to join me in humbling yourselves and calling out to God to ask for forgiveness, grace, and mercy for ourselves, our families, and our nation. There really is no other hope for the United States of America. Hey, God bless you all. Please pray.